Now for game 2 between Archangel and War God. Today we've got Archangel going with the Empire against War God's Lizardmen. This is a matchup I've talked a lot about over the years. It is, in my opinion, consistently a difficult matchup for the Empire for this specific reason, which, again, I've talked about quite a bit. The interaction of Cold One Riders versus Empire Knights means that Empire Cavalry has generally a hard time in this matchup, which kind of causes a cascade of effects, leading to a lot of their missile units maybe being less effective than you might expect. But Archangel's got a pretty interesting build here, led by Karl Franz. Already we've got some heavy-hitting single-entity power up in the sky, a bunch of handguns for infantry, so we've got some distributed armor-piercing ranged weapons to fight the big monsters, and rather than even bothering with Empire Knights at all, he's gone triple Demigryph Knights halberds for something, again, with armor-piercing, anti-large, that can compete and fight against the Lizard Cavalry. And then, yeah, just Spearmen in the front line. Relatively straightforward. Of course, Flying Jade Wizard as well to heal things up. As for War God's Lizardmen, he's got Mazamundi leading the way, a couple of Solar Engines, a couple of Salamanders, and 4 Cold One Riders. Skink cohort in the front line, Skink Skirmishers backing them up. So we're going to see right away some things get blasted at each other. We've got, of course, the Solar Engines firing the lasers, although they're not getting much benefit from the blinded contact effect right now, given that none of this stuff is actively fighting in melee, really. But the Demigryph Knights also are going to come feinting a little charge here to the Skink cohort. They are not going to take as much damage due to their high armor from the Salamanders. Shooting attacks here, primarily non-armor piercing damage. Does have a hefty bonus versus large. Definitely just don't want to stand and take the fire, but it's not going to be too extreme, especially on the move. They're going to dodge some of those shots. Same thing over on the other side here. Solar Engine is actually more dangerous because that blinded contact effect puts them only 12 melee defense. They would suffer pretty badly even against lower tier troops. But they're going to charge in here for a quick terror route with Karl, combining in to get those Skink cohort off the field. And yeah, Lizardmen right now content to just sit back and shoot, feeling like they have a little bit of a range advantage here. But let's see where those handgunners decide to fire in. Right now, yeah, this Demigryph definitely taking some heat from those Salamanders. Cold One Rider is also going to try and catch those Spearmen on the move. It looks like they maybe just barely didn't get their bracing bonus. Take a pretty nasty charge there. Skink Skirmishers having some line-of-sight issues. One of the main problems with any of the blowpipe units is they, just like handguns, they're going to suffer some line-of-sight issues. We see broadly only a couple of the handguns have actually successfully got volleys off so far, which is definitely a weakness of using any faction with gunpowder troops. It is one of the most persistent issues with Total Warhammer 3 especially, that gun units have never had great line-of-sight in this game. Granted, if we get close, we can see here this little hill is playing a little bit of a factor in actually allowing some of those Empire troops to shoot in. But, yeah, not working in the Lizardmen's favor, definitely, although still over on this flank, Cold One Riders doing okay, sort of trading decently back and forth. The Skinks doing, again, okay against the state troops. It's a reasonably cost-effective engagement for them, but a nice management in the front line is going to shut down one handgunner, maybe do some damage to the Spearmen. Solar Engines have used up quite a bit of their ammunition already, and the debuff support value hasn't been incredible yet. Like here, getting the blinded contact effect on the Demigryph Knight, and then it looks like this Cold One Knight maybe wanted to charge in there. They definitely should with that blinded up. Try and get in and get some free damage, basically, but I don't know. See the Skink Skirmishers having some line-of-sight issues here, basically running into melee to be able to get their shots off. But the Solar Engines do land a couple of more hits. Yeah, the follow-up from the Cold One Rider is going to be a little late here, but the Apotheosis helping to sustain them a little bit. Let's see, is the blinded currently not applied, so something you really got to kind of work around if you want to get the best benefit from the melee component of that. But meanwhile, over here, Royal Altdorf Griphites. Ooh, we're going to see some magic supporting the Lizardmen, trying to counteract their elite status. Little ruination of cities, little shield of the old ones, but it's not going to be enough to swing the fight in favor of the Cold One Riders, although they're doing some decent damage during that time. Yeah, I see some handgunners running into melee as well here. just line of sight issues all the way across for both these factions, but right now, looking pretty even. Maybe initiative a little bit on the Empire side as they kind of break through with a couple of key units, start to pressure the Salamanders and Mazdamundi himself, who, without slack, is really not going to have too much stopping power, but he does throw sort of a desperate net here. Yeah, try and net some of these units in to then fire in, maybe bail out his Salamanders. Ultimately, the Salamanders take enough damage in melee that I don't think they're going to be recovering anytime soon. And then the range units of the Lizardmen tried to do a little bit of kiting here, but certainly a lack of melee punching power outside of those Cold War Knights, maybe over-relying a little bit on those and on the solar engines. They're just not up to snuff for the quality of the Demigryph Knights, but we'll see. Maybe the Lizardmen can pull off some leadership shenanigans here. Handguns also getting some volleys now from various hill positions. Let's see, is that basically the only one intact? Yeah, we've got one other one over here that's still got some fight left in them, but Skink Skirmishers, this is a situation where they definitely can be dangerous. You can see even the damage even on the Altar of Cryptites. Despite their armor, they're starting to get tired. That's going to debuff their armor and make the Skink Skirmishers that much more effective, but Mazdamundi doing his own version of kiting here with a little banishment. Finish off those local skinks and then do some really nice damage to the Demigryph Knights. Try and counteract that with Earthblood. He's got quite a bit of healing so far, but here comes Karl, diving down, Galmaraz in hand, ready to rumble. Gonna try and snipe Mazdamundi here. Some Cold War Knights rally to the cause very briefly before immediately shattering to a terror rout. The whole time, though, that they're chasing Mazdamundi, the Empire is getting lit up by missiles here. Another big overcast net to catch all these units. Little ruination of cities to deal a little bit of magic damage to them. Unfortunately, not actually get the spearmen in that ruination of cities. The Altar of Cryptites getting very low, but I don't know if it's enough to actually finish off their leadership. And no doubt there's still a handful of Earthbloods left in the tank here for the Empire. Yeah, you can see them kind of form up all their key units, get another heal in there, help sustain all these Demigryph Knights and whatnot, but I mean, the Bastildon's being immune to tanking, how much is that actually going to matter here? Hard to say. He did kind of throw some in. I like that for the anti-infantry kind of disruption effect, and the spear's going to be relatively ineffective. The problem is Mazdamundi is likely to go down here. Gets sniped by the 2v1 of Karl and the Jade Wizard. Yep, he's going to maybe try and turn around and nope himself out of that engagement, but even just Karl by himself could win that fight pretty decisively, and ultimately the Lizardmen, even if they are able to finish off the Demigryph Knights, which it looks like they kind of are, Karl's going to be a huge problem. They don't have tools to deal with him right now, short of, like, you know, piling up 3v1 with Mazdamundi and the Bastildons onto Karl. Even then, Bastildons have such low damage output, although you gotta admire this one with his 34 charge bonus, 23 attack, charges on in. Yeah, Karl's all juiced up with Galmaraz. I'm not really going to care too much about that, but he does take a couple little chunks of damage. But the handguns who are in will be something that's very dangerous to the solar engines. Their 140 armor is going to do a lot against those armor-piercing missiles. But one final Shield of the Old Ones, perhaps. Let's see. It is going to keep the leadership of these units afloat, of course. And Mazdamundi at least has the Bastildon solar engine in for a 2v1. But still more heals. Ooh, a little miscast damage on the Jade Wizard there, but keeping Karl topped up. And yeah, another couple of big hits on Mazdamundi there. Down below a quarter HP. His leadership starts to waver, and as soon as it does, that's going to cascade into army losses. And a victory for the Empire and Archangel, evening him up to 1-1 on the series with War God. Yeah, definitely a fun one for sure. Karl getting some pretty solid value, also just being such a menace. He kind of wins the battle with his presence at the end, honestly. Some spearman value as well. A little bit of a mixed bag on the handgunners. One of them actually gets 1,200 value on 8,000 damage, which is pretty solid. Demigryph Knights also surprisingly limited here. I mean, Altar of Cryptites technically don't even pay for themselves, which is pretty interesting to me. Like, even in a situation where they're fighting kind of targets they're very much supposed to win against, they kind of still just die to attrition in a way, without being particularly cost-effective in terms of raw value. But, of course, tactically dealing with some of the key, you know, win condition units here for Lizardmen. Like I said, for War God, I think maybe just a little bit of lack of stopping power here. I mean, the Salamanders, hard to criticize too much. Ultimately, were able to pretty much pay for themselves. But, yeah, Solar Engines, too, got pretty decent value on their own. I would have maybe just liked to see him capitalize a little bit better with that blinded contact effect, with the Cold One Riders maybe into the demis, but ultimately it was going to be pretty tough to take down Carl with this kind of a build. Carl definitely can be killed by the Lizardmen, don't get me wrong. You know, he gets punished pretty hard by like a Dread Saurian, or even, you know, like sometimes even the other characters or single entities, you know, the Scarvet or Carnosaur is not great by itself, but you know, historically, there's different things you can do to try and counteract Carl, certainly. But here, this wasn't quite enough single entity stopping power. So, very fun one for sure. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. And rather than leave you in suspense, we'll go ahead and just tell you, in Game 3, Archangel beat down War Gods single entities in a straight-up brawl with Chaos Dwarfs versus Khorne, which means Archangel wins and advances to the semifinals, which I will be bringing to you shortly. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, like the video if you found it useful and informative. We'll see you next time.